please. And then you can shut it off if you want after, but rather people leave it on so I can see my amazing class here. Let me just get it up and running here. Hang on 1 second. We are just getting on Facebook, so the whole world could learn with us together. Hang on. Okay, 1 second. Okay. All right, here we go. Beautiful. Okay, so today we are holding today is Sunday. The first section of the new parsha, which we're starting together, is the first section of the new parsha that we are starting together is Parshas Chayei. And today's class is dedicated by Leah. She's not here today, but she's a regular in our class. Thank you, Leah, for dedicating today's class and making it possible. We really appreciate it. The Chumash I'm trying to find here is, oh, that's not it. Hang on 1 second. I got to find today's Chumash. Where is it? Maybe this is it. Here we go. So today's Chumash is first parsha again, Parshas Chayei. Look on the screen as we continue to learn the Torah portion together. Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, and it was the life of Sarah, of Abraham's wife. How long did she live for? Me'ah Shana, she lived for 100 years, plus Esrim Shana, plus add another 20 years. Sheva Shanim, and 7 years. And that's the total Shnei Chayei. So 100 plus 20 plus 7 is 127. So Sarah lives 127. Her husband will go on to live till 175. But Sarah passes away fairly younger than Avram. And we'll see, we might see why. I think Rashi brings it down. But yeah, I think we'll mention it soon in the commentary of Rashi. Something caused her to pass away. There's some commentaries on that. But anyway, she passes away. Her husband, Avram, we'll see soon, was on the way back from about to sacrifice his son with the whole story we learned in the previous week's Chumash. And now Abraham's heading back, and Sarah passes away at 127 years old. Rashi says the verse seemed a little bit funny, because the verse said she was 100 years, and then 20 years, and 7 years. So why does it have to keep on saying the word years? Just say, she passed away, she was 127 years old. So Rashi asked this question. Why does it say 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years? To tell you, an interesting commentary, that every period she was unique. Her 100 years unique, 20 years, and 7 years. That, you know, like they say, what did they say? The 40 is the new 20, or is that right? Or 40 is the new whatever, 60 is the new 50, 40. So he says here that every one of the periods, when she was 100 years old, she was like 20 years old. Sarah like 100, like 20. How is she 100 like a 20-year-old? That Rashi explains that in those days, punishment was, at least from the hands of heaven, you're considered not to be held so responsible unless you are, you're not considered to be so responsible under 20. So she had so few sins, no sins at 100 years old, just like a minor is not held punishable in the hands of heaven. Under 20, so too Sarah had no sins at 100, like she was 20. That's what it's trying to tell you. And also 100, and she was 20, like 100, that she was so beautiful, just like her skin was so pure at 7 years old, that Sarah, when she was 20, she was as beautiful and as pure as 7 years old. She was a very beautiful, special person, is what the verse is trying to tell us. And that of the years of her life, that all of them were equally good. 127 amazing years of a very special, amazing person. It's kind of the obituary that it's telling us about this great woman, Sarah. Verse 2. Vatama Sarah, and Sarah passed away in Kiryas Arba, in the area called Kiryat Arba, which is in Hebron. the Eretz Canaan, which is in the land of Israel. So Sarah passes away. She's in the town of Hebron. And that's where they were actually living at the time. If you remember the earlier Chumash, if I understand correctly, Abraham and Sarah were living in Hebron. Vayavi Avram and Abraham came to the city of Hebron to Kiryas Arba, to eulogize his wife Sarah, and to bewail her, to cry after her, to mourn her. And he came to the city of Hebron. Now, where was he coming from? I didn't read all the commentaries, but if I understand correctly, he was traveling back from sacrificing his son, and he stopped by, which he didn't end up, obviously, we know the story. He stopped by Beersheba as a pit stop, as a stop on the way to Hebron. And I guess as he's traveling back is when his wife passes away. And when he gets home, his wife had passed away. He comes home, and of course, he comes to eulogize and mourn for her when he gets back home. That is based on Rashi, that he was traveling from Beersheba. Now, why is the city, Rashi asks, called Kiryat Arba? No, I believe it's an area in Israel today. We call it Kiryat Arba. And that is, Arba, for those who know Hebrew, means four. Why is it called four? So Rashi gives us two answers. He says one answer is that there were four giants, four major giant, big giants there. Their names, Rashi tells us, were Achima and Sheshai, Talmi, and the father of these three giants I just mentioned. And therefore, it was the city of those four giants, and therefore it got called the city of the four. Another explanation Rashi gives us is that it's got the name based on who's going to be buried there in the future. Because if you go today to the Maras HaMachpelah, you go today to the cave, which we're going to talk about, this is the history, which we talk about it here. If you go to Prelah, you'll notice there's four couples there. There's Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac and Rivka, and Jacob and Leah, that they're all buried over there, and therefore it's called the city of the four, because there are four couples that are buried there in that area. And here Rashi tells us why she passed away. That in other words, it goes straight from the story of Abraham bringing his son Isaac as a sacrifice to the portion of Sarah passing away, is because Sarah found out what Abraham was going to do to her son, and before she found out, I guess, that he didn't end up killing her, as soon as she heard that he was about to slaughter her son, when she found that information, she passed out from it. She died, and she ended up passing away from hearing what her husband was about to do to her child. And she ends up passing away. And therefore, it flows right after the Kedah Yitzchak, the story of the sacrifice of the son, goes into the next story, which Sarah passes away. Anyway, continuing right along, verse 3. Abraham arose after him mourning his wife, from mourning his wife, and he spoke to the sons of Ches, Lamar, saying, telling the people that lived there with him in Hebron, he says, Ger v'toshav aneichi machem. He says, listen, I'm a new guy on the block, right? I haven't lived here for so long. I moved here, he was in Hebron, then he moved back to Beersheba, then he moved back to Hebron. Originally, he was from Kazdim, and so on. He's an out-of-towner. So he says, listen, I moved from my way. I know I came to live here. I'm with you. Give me a chuzas coverage. Nuli a chuzas coverage. Give me a burial place. I want to purchase a burial lot. Yimachem from you back for a mesi l'mufane, and I want to bury my dead before me. So can I please buy? I need a piece of real estate here that I want to buy in order to bury my wife. I want it to be as a cemetery. Now Rashi says that Avram was telling them also a coded message here. He sort of says, I'm a stranger and I'm an inhabitant. So the first Rashi explains, says, look, I am a stranger and I became an inhabitant. I became a citizen here. I moved in and I'm living here for a while. Or you could say, look, either look at me like a stranger and be nice to me and give me the portion, or if not, I'm an inhabitant. This land is actually going to belong to me one day. So if you make me problems, I'm going to claim rights to it. So make sure to give me this deal that I want in order to bury in this area in Hebron. So the sons of Ches responded to Avram, saying to him, Mister, you're a holy, respected man, Avram. Shemeini Adoni, listen, my master. You're a prince of God. Abraham was a very wealthy, famous, holy man. Everybody, remember, we learned that Avimelech wanted to make peace with him. Abraham, you're a holy, honorable, respected, tremendous person, Avram. Living in our town here, living in our midst. He says, choose the best burial, no problem. Choose the nicest choice you gave. Whatever you want, we'll give you. Nobody's going to stop you. You just tell us where you want to bury your wife, which area you want, and it's yours. We're not going to stop you. You're such an honorable, respectable person. You tell us what light you want, and we'll give it to you. So Avram got up, and he bowed. He was very thankful and appreciative for the sons of Ches. So he tells them, he speaks to the sons of Ches, saying, please, I ask you, if it's your will, Likbar es Mesi, I want to bury my dead, Milfanai Shma'uni Upiguli, listen to me, please, and give me specifically the Ephron ben Zohar. Give me the area. I want the piece of property where Ephron, the son of Zohar, is. That's what I want. That's the area, please, that I would like. You told me you can have whatever I want. Give me in that area where this specific person is. And in there, verse 9, what do I want? I want a very specific place. Yitinli, give me what's called the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the double cave. Give me the double cave. Right? Machpelah means double. Ma'aras means a cave. I want the double cave. Why is it called the double cave? Rashi explains right away. He says because it was like a kind of double floor. There was a section and a structure with a structure over it. There was an upper story over it, so it's called the double cave. He says, I want that double cave in order to bury my wife in there. Asher b'ksei sadehu, it's at the edge of the field of this person that Avram just mentioned before in Ephron and Zohar. B'kesef mali yitananali b'seichachem lakuzas kaver. I'm going to pay full price. Give me that thing. Please, I ask you, that's the area I want. I'm going to pay full price for it. Whatever it's worth. Just name the price. Tell me how much the value of it is for value, and I'm going to pay for it. Now, Ephron, because Rashi tells us that this guy Ephron, who Avram was famous Avram, the holy prince of God, who they quoted him, one of the most famous people at the time, very wealthy and very prestigious, very honorable person. People realize the miracles that happened with him. Is going to talk to this little guy, this simpleton, this guy maybe Ephron, this guy Ephron. So Rashi tells us they elected him that day to become, like in charge of them. He became like a prestigious person. The guy that wanted to do business with Avram, they elected him to become an official, an appointed official. They appointed him like an officer over them because now he's having business dealings with the great Avram. So in order, out of respect for Avram, they made this guy also, that he's doing business dealings with, also a prestigious person. And Bayan Ephron, so Ephron, who's responding to Abraham and wants his specific property, he wants the cave at the edge of his field. Bayan Ephron Achiti, the Chit Ephron is from the Chittite tribe over there. As Avram said to Abraham, Ba'aznim b'nei Ches, and he responds in everybody's ear. He says, in the ears of everybody b'nei Ches, everyone that was in the gates of the city, Lame are saying, why were there so many people there? And Rashi tells us, because you have to remember, he's just mourning his wife, that everybody left their work in order to escort and pay respect to the great Sarah who had passed away. So the house was a full house. There was a lot of people there, and this conversation's happening, is taking place between Abraham and Ephron, and everybody's there, and they see what's going on. So Ephron responds to Abraham. He says, La yadoini. He says, no, my master. He says, no, my master. Shma'eni, listen to me. He says, no, you're offering all this money. Shma'eni, hasad and asati lach. I gave you the field. It's yours. Don't talk about money. It's already done. You don't have nothing to talk about. It's yours. Don't worry about it. And the field I gave you, and the cave that's there, I give it to you, in front of the eyes of my whole nation. It's yours. Bury your dead there. No, there's nothing to talk about. Don't worry. No other documents, nothing signed. It's done. No money, no transaction, no money needed. But Abraham, it's very interesting. It's a very important lesson here. I guess Abraham sensed, either he thought it was important to buy, or he sensed that the guy maybe wanted money. We'll see in a moment. And he's going to tell the guy, no. He says, I'm not interested in your free gift. I want to pay for it, right? I want to just mention something. I believe I saw this a long time ago. I think it's obvious. Why did Abraham, it's very interesting. Abraham specifically wanted, he didn't just want to bury his wife anywhere in Hebron. He wanted which would make sense because she passed away there, but he wanted this guy's field and he wanted that cave. But if I remember correctly, and it seems obvious, the reason is because Adam and Eve were buried there, which means Adam and Eve were the first people, and he knew that, Abraham knew that. I don't know that the people he was purchasing the fields from knew that, but he knew that, which is why he wanted specifically to buy that cave to bury his wife there, and the future of the great fathers of the Jewish people and mothers will be buried there. So here's Abraham's response to this business transaction. So Abraham bows in front of the people of the land, they're all there, as we said. And he speaks to Ephron. He says, in front of everyone else listening, in the ears of the people there of the land. Lemar ach says, no, im ata lushmein. He says, please listen to me. Nasati kasef asada mimeni ve'ekbaras mesi sham. He says, no. He says, please, I'm giving you the money for the field. Take the money. I don't like this free thing that's going on here. Take the money and let me bury my wife over there. He says, I hear that you want. She's telling us, I hear you want to give it to me for free, but I can't take it for free. He says, no, I wish that you just listen to me and just take the money that I want to offer you for this field. And I have the money. He says, he's ready. I have the money. It's prepared. Don't worry about it. I have the money. We know Avram was a very wealthy man. So what does Ephron respond? Vayan Ephron as Avram. So Ephron says back, okay, you want to pay for it? All right. Adoni Shmaini, my master, listen. Arbam Eretz Abam shekel kesef. He says, listen, for this land, 400 silver shekels. Between me and you, Mahi, a rich guy like you, and for me, you want to buy the field for me, 400 silver coins, that's Mischah Kvar, and bury your dead there. And he says, between two friends, Rashi says, yeah, we're buddies, two close people like us, what's 400 silver shekels? Put in the price. Let's do the sale and bury your dead there. So Avram heard what Ephron said, and he says, okay, I'm going to pay up. Vayishkol Avram Ephron as a kesef. He weighed out the silver coins that he asked for. Asher Dibur Bazim Neches, Arba Meishakel Kesef. He gave him the best. There were different kinds of coins. There were coins that maybe not every country accepted. You know what I mean? Like maybe rand or different money that you rubles. He gave him like the dollar, the American dollar, which is good everywhere. He gave him the good big silver coins, which wherever you go, it's worth. Rashi says something interesting here. He says, this is some people, they talk big and they do very little, right? You have some people in life who talk little and do big. Some people who talk big and do very little. The guy first was like, all nice. Nah, I'll give it to you for free, no problem. And then when Avram said, no, I want to pay, he could have given him a deal, He made him pay top dollar for it. So we see what really was in his mind the whole time. Maybe Avram sensed that and therefore knew that the guy really wanted to get well paid for it. So that's that is today's chumash. It's very interesting chumash, how famous Cave of the Machpelah, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried, and Adam and Eve. This is how Abraham purchased it for his wife Sarah. Any questions or comments on today's chumash that we have so far?
Yes, Rabbi. Yes. Is the Cave of Machpelah near the Garden of Eden?
Is the Cave of Machpelah or the Garden of Eden?
So, Rabbi, when I was in Israel and we visited the Cave of Machpelah, that's what they had said. That was another reason why Abraham had wanted.
Okay, possible. Right. I'm trying to think back to the class we had. I mean, we discussed at length the 4 rivers that were coming out of the Garden of Eden in one of our classes we did a while ago. I don't know. Maybe I don't remember. I mean, we had a class on Chevron a while ago. Perhaps I guess so. That's very interesting. So you're saying that they told you that somehow in tradition, the opening to the Garden of Eden, right. That's where Adam and Eve were created. That's where they were buried. You're saying that's where they passed away. That's where Adam and Eve end up getting buried. Okay, cool.
I don't know.
That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. I didn't know that. I believe I saw somewhere once that he knew, there was a question if Abraham knew that Adam and Eve were buried there, and that's one of the reasons why he wanted, which makes sense, to get a plot near that area. Yeah, great point. Great point. Thanks for sharing that, Andrea. Any other questions or comments that anybody has on today's chumash?
Sorry.
I do.
Yes, the Stein carpool. What's going on?
I'd like to know how they knew where Adam and Eve was buried, because the Mabul, the flood was, you couldn't tell what was what after the flood.
I don't know. I don't remember that. Yeah, no, it's a good. Again, I'm sharing from memory here. I don't know. It's a good question. How they knew what was what? I don't know how. I forget. I saw it a while ago. I don't remember where it's from. It's a good question. How would he know? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he knew spiritually. He was able to sense that is where it was, right? How does anybody know, right? How do we know today where that Adam and Eve are buried there? I guess it's the same question. I mean, right, same question you're asking. How do they follow up and know where it is? Maybe they had a way to know. Maybe there was some markers that they were able to know, or they were able to sense it. I believe that the Arizal, also just talking from memory, he told people where people were buried in Sfas later on. You know, not everything was known, and either it was the Arizal or some other people let people know where people were buried. That's how we know. How do we pass down where the graves are exactly? It was Arizal, or I forget, who later on passed down where people are buried. But I guess it's a good question. That's the way we would know. I'm not sure how else we would know.
And I thought the Garden of Eden was in like Iraq or Iran or like going towards Saudi Arabia. I didn't think it was in Israel.
I don't know. I can't comment on it. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't know. We have to, maybe we'll look into that tomorrow. I mean, I remember there is a discussion among the commentaries if that is like a spiritual world, which it's not accessible today. You know what I mean? Like it does say, the Torah does give us the details. It's 4 rivers going out of the Garden of Eden, Lahashkas and Sagan. And do we know where those 4 rivers are? We did, in an earlier class, I actually put a map up of where, you know, it's the Euphrates River, and then this river going down to Africa from Egypt. One of the things I'll share, I did give a class a few years ago in detail about it. I think also the things change as time goes on. You know, like mountains will come, or the flood might have caused great change. So I don't know if everything stayed exactly as is. Again, so that will go with the question of where was Adam and Eve, or was it a garden? Like it says over there that there were Malachi Kabbalah, or whatever, there were these angels that he put there. No one should be able to, Adam shouldn't be able to come back in, right? So what does that mean? That it's like a hidden world? I mean, this is there's many different, if I remember correctly, different ways the commentaries deal with this. So I don't know. I can't comment on that, but it's a great discussion. Not for now, but very good point. Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? Good, they're interesting topics, but we need to look up the different commentaries on it. Yeah. Lana, you want to say something?
Yeah, I didn't know if I was unmuted. I wanted to make a comment about Sarah. And so we are told that, she was a greater prophetess than Abraham. And, she had very few sins, just that, as you mentioned, with the 100 and then 20 and then 7. But I find it interesting that she didn't merit to live such a long life. Even though she was a greater prophetess than Abraham, for example, he lived so much longer, and that she didn't merit to find out that, in her physical life, she didn't merit to find out that Yitzchak wasn't really sacrificed. I just find that very interesting that, we're told how
I'm just adding to your story. She basically prayed for 100 years to have a child. She finally has a child at 90 years old. She raises the child for 37 years till she's 127 years old. And then she passes away from hearing what her husband's about to do to her child. It's somewhat a sad story.
Right.
Yeah.
And
by the way, and Hagar goes on to live the wife, he's going to remarry her and then have more children with her later on. Yeah.
Right. Who wasn't as righteous as Sarah. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like almost like she fulfilled her mission. Like that was her destiny to give birth to Yitzchak, and then she passed away from thinking what her husband's about to do to her son. Right. I mean, it's another very interesting point to in the Chumash to look at. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's a question or it's you're noticing some very interesting points in the parsha. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point. Very, very good point. I don't have an answer to why, when, but this is Hashem's plan, Hashem's mission that's unfolding here in front of us in creation of Yitzhak and the Jewish people. That happens. Yeah, very good. Okay. Anybody else? Any other excellent points? Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Lana. Oh, the women are great points today over here, leading the class over here. Anybody else? Any other any other questions or comments? No, we're good. Leah, you're not going to fill in? Leah, you missed it. I thank you before for dedicating today's class. So, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for making these classes possible. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, we're good. Okay, let's go on to today's Tanya. So, moving on to today's Tanya, I want to share with you, I was trying to understand it, and I'll share with you a little bit of my own perspective on that helped me. Maybe it's a good idea or not. Let me share with you a little bit of a twist, the way I'm understanding it. Hopefully it's right, but we'll try to understand today's Tanya. Let's look inside. Hine ratzin Elyon Baruch Hu mechuna v'nikra b'fi chachmi ha'emes v'shem keser Elyon u'bay tarach amudi ar. The Kabbalists, great Kabbalists, refer to God's will, the Creator's will, right? What do I mean His will? Like His will that we should do mitzvahs. God wants us to do mitzvahs. He wants us to put on tefillin, and would like the women to light even the rabbinic mitzvahs. They want them to light Shabbos candles, to all the mitzvahs that we have. So God's will, God has a will, a desire that we should do mitzvahs. Now the Kabbalists call this will, the Kabbalistic name that they gave to it was called Keser. Keser means crown. So the will of God, they're calling the will, God's will, Keser, and Keser in Hebrew means crown. And to go further with Kabbalistic analogy that we're giving here, Keser, if you want to take the letters of Keter, of crown, it's Chaf, Taf, Reish. So Taf is equivalent to 400. Reish is equivalent to 200. So we have 400, 200, and 600. And Chaf is 20. So we have 620. So the will, God's will is the crown. So crown is like, what's a crown? A crown is something that sits on your head. Kind of maybe in the human being, we'll say it's in the psyche of the person, the conscious, it's the subconscious part of the person. It's the deeper part of the person, right? It's your emotions and your mind. Those are all your very conscious parts of yourself. But what makes you tick, your will, your drive, is your ratzon. That's your will. That's your deeper. That's kind of the highest part of the person. The deepest, highest, what we want to call highest, the deepest part of the person is his will and his desires, his drive, his will. That is kind of the deepest part of the person. So God's will, so to say, is the will that we should do mitzvahs, but that will of God is the crown, meaning it's the highest part, but also has, and here's where the detail gets into detail here, Keser, the crown has the number 620. Why 620? So he says, very interesting, because there are how many mitzvahs? We all know there are how many mitzvahs? There are 613 mitzvahs. So how do we get to 620, not 613? Because the rabbis introduced another 7 mitzvahs, and therefore we get to the number 613. Okay, so we get 613 plus 7 gets us to 620, and the will, God's will and desires that a Jew should fill the 613 mitzvahs. Now, he gives you an example of the 620 are like beams. Listen to the example he gives. For example, just like you have a big house with a huge room, very high ceiling. I don't know what's the biggest kind of a palace that you've been to with a big room that has a massive, huge room, a massive hall. Maybe think about, like those huge storage warehouses, huge room. And in these rooms, they have pillars that go from the very, very high ceilings. Now I'm thinking of where the boats dock, those, what do they call them? The hangars, the airplane hangars stuff. They have beams that will go all the way from the very high up ceiling, the roof, all the way down to the floor. So how many beams do these rooms have? So they have these massive beams that go all the way up from the very high ceiling, all the way down to the floor. So he's saying, just like in these big, huge rooms, they have a lot of pillars. We have 620 beams. Remember Keser, the word 620 beams that are going from the roof, from the ceiling, all the way down to the floor. Why? What is it in our analogy of mitzvahs? What does it mean? It means that the will and the action are very, very far from each other, because the desire is that I want something. Let's say God wants us to do mitzvahs, and the physical act of doing mitzvahs, they're kind of worlds apart. So it's a very high ceiling. It's very, very far away from the floor. So the beam, every mitzvah is another beam that's connecting the ceiling, which is very high up, all the way down to the floor, right? So each mitzvah we do is making a connection, a beam between the high ceiling, which is very, very far away from the floor, really, really far away, but there are our will and drive of God that wants us to do something physical, and thereby connecting the will to the action. So the very far away will to the floor, the ceiling, all the way to the floor, the will to the action is having a connection now, because the will is that you should do a physical act, and therefore there's a connection between the will and the action. Okay, so that is what we're saying so far in time. Kacha mamish, just like that. Adarach mashal, for example, Keser Elyoin, this crown of heaven, in Kabbalistic words, the term crown, the will of God, Baruch Hu. The crown is on top of the head. It's higher than the internal stuff. Like in the person, you have the wisdom and the will, the conscious part of the person. The crown is like the subconscious. It's like really on top of the person. It's really the tippity top, highest part of the person. And that's why it's called crown. Because it's a subconscious. It's kind of deeper than just the conscious part of the mind, which is higher. It's above that. Which is the normal conscious part, is our conception, comprehension, application, all the ways that our mind works, our wisdom, and so on. But the will is deeper than that, right? I think if you look in some of the books on psychology and so on, what makes you tick? What's pushing you, right? Is it the ego? Is it libido? What's the desire? What's the drive that's driving the person? And that's the deepest part of the person. So chachma, wisdom is the conscious part. The subconscious is the will. But now we have a connection between the act and the will, because the act is acting out the will. And here, in our case, the will of Hashem, the act of the mitzvah, is acting out. And this will, how do you physically do the will? How do you make that connection? How do you make that pillar? The slavish v'tayag mitzvah Torah, it dresses up in the actions of the 613 biblical mitzvahs that are in the Torah, and the 7 commandments that are rabbinic, zayim mitzvah derbanon. Most of them, if you look at the acts of the mitzvah, they're all very physical acts. They're all physical. Put on tefillin, and on Shabbos, don't work on Shabbos. And so a lot of the mitzvahs, they're very, very physical acts of the mitzvahs, the do's and the don'ts. And even though some of the mitzvahs are speech mitzvahs, that you're supposed to speak, don't speak lashon hara, speak the words of davening, even though some are speech, speech is still very physical. The bottom line is when you speak, you're moving your lips and you're doing an act. Well, what about the mitzvahs that are on the emotions and the mind? There are a number of mitzvahs that are also on how we should think and how we should feel, not to think about certain things, to think certain things, to love God. Those are not so physical. I said, well, it's still somewhat physical. Even the mental mitzvahs and the emotion mitzvahs on the heart, even though they're kind of more spiritual because they're your emotions or your mind, but you're still a physical person, still a very physical person doing the will of God. So even though they're emotions by you, but they're still physical, they're human beings and bodies, which make them, by definition, physical mitzvahs. Shubha b'chira, you're a soul in a body, you have the choice to do good or bad. You could choose to do good, to move your heart towards the right way, to do good. However, had you been a soul without a body, you would never need to be commandment what to think and what to feel, because you're automatically wired to think good. So just the mere fact that your soul's in a body and now you're challenged by being in a physical body, that makes it a physical mitzvah. That emotional mitzvah becomes physical. So v'nimtza. So what's coming out of this whole thing that we're trying to bring out? That God's will is coming into the very physical world. Whether it's the action mitzvahs, whether it's the speech mitzvahs, and even the emotional mitzvahs, they are taking something that's very deep, very high, the drive, the will of God, and bringing them into a physical world, into people, to human beings down here. So the mitzvah is now creating that funnel. It's creating a big, huge beam all the way from will of God, all the way to the physical act of the mitzvah. That mitzvah is giving you a way to connect with the Creator. It's just like this room with a very high roof, that this beam is going all the way from the top ceiling, from the roof, which is in our analogy, the will of God, till the physical mitzvah. So the drive is that a Jew should put on tefillin, and you're actually putting on the tefillin down here. You're doing the mitzvah. And now he wants to add, and this is where I want to bring, I haven't heard this analogy before, but I want to bring it up. So another analogy is like when you go to the bank, you go through a drive-through in the bank, there is also like that funnel, that plastic piece that you could put your deposit in, whatever, and you could send it to the teller, and then the teller could send it back to you. I think even some stores, they have these things that drive in the tunnel, maybe even like B&H. I think they have these tunnels that brings you brings to the checkout counter whatever it is that you ordered. So imagine just like a bank. So each mitzvah is creating a funnel from you to the bank, from you to the teller, right? Every mitzvah that Hashem gives you is now creating a new, not just a beam from the roof to the ground, but what I want to add here is it's creating a funnel from you to the bank, or from you to Hashem. In our example, it's opening up a new funnel, meaning it's not a beam that's solid, but it's a beam that's empty, that's hollow in the middle, that you now can connect to God. It's just creating that connection, that open big plastic pipe, like a PVC pipe, and it's that mitzvah is giving the ability, boom, to make a connection. Every mitzvah that's out there, 620 mitzvahs, are making 620 different connections between you and God, between God, you and God's will. And those pipes are hollow. That's what he's saying. So that mitzvah, so tefillin, let's say, goes down from the will of God and connects to you, but it's a hollow pipe. And what happens is that pipe, like let's say, goes over you. Now you're inside that pipe, the will of God, or your soul. Different levels of your soul are inside the pipe, depending on which level of soul you're getting in touch with when you do that mitzvah. And that pipe surrounds your soul. What happens is, through the hollow part of that pipe, oilin hanaran shaloi, the different levels of his soul, adarayma milas, go up. It's just like by the teller. You could send your deposit to the bank. You could your soul, you could send it up through that pipe. Adarayma milas, it serves Hashem to connect to God. So not just is the mitzvah itself, which is making that pipe connection between you and God, you can now use the inside of the pipe to travel. So your soul can go up through the pipe to Hashem. It could climb up that pipe, like in the bank. You could send your deposit. It could climb up to Hashem and go to the high level of will. And there's now a pipe that it could travel in, go straight to the will, the high level of will of Hashem. So your soul can climb that pipe to a tremendously high energy by Hashem, God's will. And it could now see the most beautiful experience it can have. Right? Imagine if you could travel in this pipe to go on vacation. Here we're talking about you travel in this pipe to see the greatest awesome sight possible to see. You see Hashem's will, Hashem's greatness over there. And you could climb even higher than the will, which is the inside pleasantness of Hashem. So you could reach this really high experience that pipe created. So the pipe got you from point A to point B. The mitzvah created that travel ability to get from point A to B, but it actually could take you even further than where the pipe's going. The pipe could maybe end up in New York, but you could still travel to New Jersey past that. So the pipe will create the bridge to get you to Hashem's will. Not just as the pipe creating the mitzvah that comes down from Hashem to you, but now you can also go up and experience godliness in the greatest height of traveling in the hollow pipe on the inside. And he gets it. I don't want to get into the note here. I'm going to skip that note and just leave it at that. So let's just finish. There's a parenthesis. We'll skip the parentheses. 7 mitzvahs to rabbinic mitzvahs. He's just explaining that the 7 rabbinic mitzvahs are not their own, because really we say 613. The rabbis added on another 7 because the Torah says you're not allowed to add. It's exactly 613. So what is the meaning that the rabbis added 7 mitzvahs? Then it really is 613. It's just that the extra 7 kind of are not new mitzvahs, but they're included within the 613. I believe one of the 613 is to listen to the rabbi. So it's not 613 plus 7. It is another 7, but those 7 are included into 613. But anyway, the main point that we wanted to mention today, got back to our point, is that there's every mitzvah we do makes a kind of like a pipe, like a PVC pipe that's empty in the middle, but it makes now a connection that you could travel all the way from God's will to you, but at the same time you can go back up and experience Hashem in a greater level because you have the mitzvah there. You can actually experience godliness in a very high, profound way, and that is the point of today's Tanya. Any questions or comments on today's deep Tanya that we learned? Any questions or comments, or it's all good? Okay, very good. Thank you all for joining me. Have an amazing day. Make sure to turn your video on and say goodbye before you go.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Evan, for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Great week ahead of you. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. Thank you to the Stein family. Who was listening? Harry? Ira? Very good. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great week ahead. Harvey, have a good week. Mitchell, have a good week. Yehuda.
Have a good day, Rabbi.
Have a good day, Mitchell. Have a good day. Thank you, Leah, and have a great week. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yehuda, for joining us. See you all very soon. Take care.